Everyone, here is the useless info or a fact about every single League of Legends champion. Please consider subscribing if you enjoy, and let's get into things. One of Aatrox's scrapped abilities was to have him drop his sword and then have his teammate respawn as a Darkin. And when they did, they'd receive a bunch of bonus AD, AP, CDR, and more. If you zoom in on the Academy Ahri splash art, or I guess the Academy splash art in general, you can see that the classroom number is actually 1337 in reference to elite speak. And in case you don't know what that means, it's basically online slang for elite. Akali had an early animation of her spinning and slashing with a katana, but it was eventually cut because they thought it was too similar to Yasuo. Kind of unfortunate though, because it looks pretty sick. Akshan actually has a quote in reference to Jesus when he said, "Go and sin no more."
Go and die no more.
Alistar's very first splash art was tweaked specifically for his black and golden skins, basically so they could just recolor them. The circle Vancouver Amumu is standing on is oddly enough the exact same one from Masquerade's Evelynn's Chinese splash art. In Anivia's Bird of the Prey splash art, she's actually holding a Philosopher's Stone in one of her talons, which in case you didn't know is an old discontinued League item. In the old lore, Annie was 8 years old, but in the current and new lore, she's 9 for some reason. Hey everyone, really quick, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, Omniheroes. I've talked about them before on this channel, but for good reason, because Omniheroes is an amazing heroic fantasy casual strategy RPG game that has received recommendations from both Google Play and the App Store. In the game, you play as Omni Guardians and you're called to rescue captured Valkyries from demons and battle together against evil threatening the world. And to do that, players can summon sick legendary heroes, unlock different synergies, and match hundreds of team comps. This game is perfect because it offers both casual and relaxed gameplay for those who just want to chill instead of sweat like in League, and at the same time, it also still has a ton of opportunities to strategically challenge yourself. After all, there are 17 unique synergies and over 100 team comps, so you can basically get as creative as you want. Plus, if you're feeling lazy, the game even has a feature called Quick Battle, which literally lets you skip battles and just claim the rewards. It's honestly the best feature ever invented. Finally, Omniheroes is starting their first season right now where you can experience an amazing new storyline, roguelike dungeon gameplay, and GVG mode. Plus, on top of that, there's some brand new characters too. So make sure to download Omniheroes right now so you can say you were there from season 1, and if you use my link, you can claim 3 rounds of 777. Thank you, Omniheroes, for supporting the channel, and now back to the video. This was the loading screen placeholder for Aphelios during development. I especially like the "do you really need that many weapons" text. In the old lore, Ashe and Tryndamere were dating, and according to Blitzcrank's dating service, yes, he ran a dating service in the lore, the two were perfectly matched. Aurleion Sol's mecha Aurleion Sol is inspired by Mega Rayquaza from Pokemon. One of Azir's original concepts for his ultimate was called Sandstorm, and it was kind of ridiculous.
What Sandstorm did is you'd channel and then you'd make like a lane-wide sandstorm. Like the storm would be like this big. It would slow anybody inside of it and it would nocturne darkness them. And then in the middle, there was an Eye of the Storm that like had a huge damage of true damage that would come down. And then the rank up for the storm increased its size. So it started out as lane-wide and you could cast it from here, and increased its size and its cast range. And so by late game, it was literally you'd push the button and it would cover the entire map.
To help tease the release of Bard, Bard's face was thrown around Summoner's Rift, and whenever you hovered over them in spectator mode, they would light up. When Bel'Veth was first released, the Battle Boss Bel'Veth splash art had the same health bar from some of the bosses in the game Terraria. It was pretty much an exact copy, but they eventually ended up changing it. About a year ago, there was a situation where Riot made a change to Blitzcrank's E that would occasionally knock up non-champion targets it killed and send them completely flying. Zombie Brand was actually based on the basic zombie from Plants vs. Zombies. They even have the same clothes and everything. Braum has a quote where he says,
"Mother always said, float like iceberg, sting like thrown iceberg,"
in reference to Muhammad Ali's float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. During Briar's initial release, there was a bug on her where if she got Baron buff, the minions would sometimes be able to farm gold for her.
Ryan! How? How does this even happen? Oh man. What is this?
According to the lore, Caitlyn in heels is 185 centimeters, or 6 feet 1 inches in freedom units. Camille's hookshot was originally going to be recastable mid-swing. In other words, she almost could have just swung around the entire map non-stop, but for obvious reasons, the idea was dropped. I think it could have been an interesting alt concept though. I never actually realized this, and maybe I'm the only one, but Cass's splash art is actually of her turning a bunch of soldiers into stone in the background. During development, Cho'Gath's title got bounced around multiple times, going from the Green Terror to the Black Terror, and finally to the Terror of the Void. I gotta say though, I'm somewhat surprised they never considered the Purple Terror. The Ice Toboggan Corki skin was actually made in reference to the 2010 Winter Olympics, and specifically the American bobsled team who won gold in bobsleigh for the first time in 62 years. Darius's ultimate was originally called Blood Rage, but it was actually renamed due to players' requests to make it better and reflect his personality more. Diana's theme was sung by Lisa Thorne, and she was actually one of the graphic design artists for Diana. Talk about a person of many talents. Mundo's skin bow for Pool Party Mundo, where it says what he really loves are his shorts, shorts, they're comfy and easy to wear, is a reference to Pokemon and the famous quote, I like shorts, they're comfy and easy to wear. Draven is the only champion to have 2 different crit animations, one for each arm's attack. Ekko's ultimate was originally intended to be as accurate to his lore as possible, and it actually rewound the entire map 8 seconds. However, it was of course eventually changed. I mean, could you imagine how broken that would be though? Just picture having a critical Baron teamfight not go your way, and then just having the free opportunity to try again. Elise's worst jungle matchup is Briar, and her best is by far Lee Sin. During Eve's recall, she'll either ignore you with her claws or wave at you depending on her mood. According to the lore, Ezreal was banned from Sona's recital, but for reasons unknown. Fiddlesticks actually has no words of its own. It instead repeats things that it's heard or things that have been said by its victims. This is especially noticeable in his voice lines.
Help me! Help me! Hear me! Jinx! All your fault! All your fault!
Fiora's house name Laurent is in reference to Nicolas Laurent, the CEO of Riot Games, and it was chosen because the creator Alex Yee said he was the only French person he knew. Funny enough, Nicolas didn't even know about it until he found out during the production of Runeterra. In case you didn't know, Riot used to actually do art spotlights like they do champion spotlights, but for each champion's splash art. And for Fizz's art spotlight, one of the co-workers decided to draw a mustache on Fizz and Chomper while they were away from the desk, which you can actually still see briefly in the art spotlight. This is what some of the original Galio artwork looked like. Gangplank used to have a passive in his E called Raise Morale, which gave him bonus attack damage and bonus movement speed. And even before that, there was bonus attack speed.
Raise Morale passively gives Gangplank increased attack damage and movement speed.
Additionally, there was even a time where he was able to kill his own allied minion, which would then inspire your team's champions. Anyways, nowadays, Raise Morale resides in one of his ultimate buffs. When Garen is spinning, his passive icon actually says Garen is spinning to win. The plan for Gnar's ultimate during development was for him to devour things similar to Cho'Gath, but instead, once he was done, he'd spit them back out and leave a puddle of whatever this is. When using Gragas's Oktoberfest skin, his cast says Rengar Brüll, and on it, the Brüll is German for brew. In other words, it's Rengar brew. When Graves hits level 11 using the Sentinel Grave skin, his visual effects become purified and remove the black mist visual effects, and his lights become even brighter. Here's also a comparison of before and after of his ult. Also, during his death animation, instead of dying, TF's blue card flies out and teleports him at the last second. During development, Gwen's codename was Peppy Skirmisher. Hecarim's ultimate actually used to drag the first champion it hit, and his W used to spawn 2 riders that rode alongside him. Having multiple horsemen was originally going to be a big part of his kit. In the lore, Heimerdinger was responsible for creating Corki's Rafflecopter. During development, Hui was called Ink Mage, and Kayn was used as Hui's placeholder since Kayn's scythe kinda looked like Hui's brush. In other words, it was basically just a ranged Kayn, everyone's worst nightmare. Flowey's tentacles aren't actually tentacles, and instead they're arms because tentacles only have suckers at the end. Aurelia's W was originally going to be able to fully counter abilities, like Syndra's ultimate for example, and reflect it back at them. Basically Fiora's W, but on crack. Ivern's squirrel-like friend is named Mikas, and he was actually supposed to die early on in Ivern's lore, but some of the rioters hated this idea of killing the squirrel so much that they ended up changing it. Out of all the champions in the game, Janna mains have the highest average rank at Plat 3. In the old lore, Jarvan IV's blood was used by Swain and Vladimir to resurrect Sion. During the April Fool's update of 2011, Riot jokingly added a few patch updates to Jax, such as Jax can no longer dodge, Jax's lamppost has been deemed overpowered and replaced by a rocket launcher, all of Jax's abilities are now ranged, and Jax can now dodge again. Forsaken Jace, along with Chosen Master Yi, were both released on Star Wars Day, May the 4th, since you know they were Star Wars themed skins. Did you know that Jin was actually named after the particle effects artist Jin Ho Yang who was working on him? He jokingly threw his name into the hat, but later on everyone kind of agreed that Jin was actually the best name for the champion. The biggest thing to mention though is that Jin, the artist, was spelled J-I-N, and thus the champion in production was also named the same. But later on they of course changed it to J-H-I-N because, you know.
4.
Did you know that Jinx almost has Zeri's Q on release? In fact, Zeri's Q today is literally a redone version of that original concept, which now that I think about it, makes so much sense because these animations are really similar.
Zeri's Q, I scripted up a version of it 8 years ago on Jinx. What Jinx did is she could swap to her rocket launcher and she could shoot skill shot rockets on her auto attack cooldown.
Instead of being from the void, Kai'Sa was almost a vampire hunter turned vampire. To tease the release of Callista, Riot added some green mist to some of the champions' pages, indicating that Callista marked them, and only champions who betrayed someone were marked. For example, this was Xerath's page marked for his betrayal of Azir. Karma, oddly enough, has the highest win rate when an Anivia is on the team with her. After the whole Dearest Karthus fiasco, Riot embodied the meme, and on the PBE server, they even added in an Easter egg where if you got a bugged item, they briefly showed you this message. Also, side note, did you know that back when they added in smart pings in the game originally, they specifically said they added them in to help people type less? Take a look.
You can type Karthus ult if you need to, by the way. You can type if you want.
Wait a minute!
We wanted to give players more ways to communicate with their teammates, especially in situations where there isn't enough time to type.
By the way, I took this clip straight from the 2023 League Rewind that I did, so if you haven't already seen it yet, consider checking it out. I know it's long, but honestly, I think most people here will enjoy it. Plus, you don't even have to just take my word for it.
This was a really good video. No joke, this is actually one of the best recaps ever. It's not over-edited, it's not zoom-edited, it's got all the history of the year. That was a really good video. I like that video a lot, chat.
All right, that's it. Thanks, guys. Back to the video. Kassadin holds the record for the highest ban rate of all time because in 2014, he had a ban rate of 99.52%. He was just a little bit busted. Katarina's original recall with the Sleigh Bell Katarina skin had her pole dancing instead of just chopping the candy cane away. Did you know that Kayle almost had a dash? One of her scrapped abilities was that her E would let her dash and then grant her attack speed. Additionally, she almost had this for an ultimate as well.
I had an ultimate where like it was actually like really long range, and she fly into the sky and then hurl like a freaking meteor at the person she ulted. So she kind of like did like a half Galio ult. She wouldn't go to them though, but she'd like fly up in the air, she'd see the whole map, and she just hurl a meteor at the person that she ulted. So a lot like the current ult, except you couldn't move during it. You'd go untargetable. So it'd be like a Xayah ult, where like you'd fly up and then just like bring the justice of Demacia down on some fools.
Did you know that with Kayn, if you're tied exactly in blue orbs and red orbs, you'll automatically be defaulted to the red form over the blue form? In the Kennen MD splash art, you can see a very sad pre-VSU update melee minion in Cho'Gath's stomach. Kha'Zix's name actually means you face yourself in ancient Shuriman. The relationship with Wolf and Lamb with Kindred is based on writer's Matthew Dunn's relationship with his wife. Kled has a voice line referencing Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride.
Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die!
No! I'm Kled, and this here's Scarl. Prepare to die.
This isn't really a fact, but a while back, this person used BMod to do a promposal. 74.7% of people take Flash Teleport on Cassante, but he actually has a way higher win rate with Ghost Teleport at 51.3%. LeBlanc's staff was specifically inspired by Tsukasa from Hack. Lee's Godfist Lee Sin was actually inspired by Aang from Avatar The Last Airbender. Leona's outfit in Iron Solari Leona is obviously based on the item Locket of the Iron Solari. But did you know that if you zoom in on the background, you can actually see an emoji face on the structure? Did you know that Lilia was originally going to have different forms that she swapped back and forth from? For example, one was Day Lilia and another was Night Lilia. It was kind of like Elementalist Lux, except each form would have different powers and abilities, and their forms would swap on different timers, but it was never really clarified on what those timers were.
This was one of the ideas for Lilia, is that she was a day-night jungler that had like form changes based on like what time of day it was.
In the lore, Lissandra possesses telepathic abilities that allow her to mind travel during her dreams and see things beyond her sight. She can even enter other people's dreams. Lucian's Japanese voice actor is Rikia Koyama, who has done a lot of work in popular shows like Demon Slayer, Naruto, and Hunter x Hunter. Pool Party Lulu's Citrine Chroma is a reference to Finding Nemo. In the lore, Zoe has beef with Lux because Zoe's got a thing for Ezreal and Ezreal has a thing for Lux. Also, random side note, this is what Lux's placeholder splash art looked like. Mecha Malphite's Pearl Chroma is a reference to Disney's Herbie the Love Bug. After the item ZZ Rot was removed, Riot temporarily changed Gathering Swarm stacks for his W to ZZ Rot stacks to honor the item. Maokai's name was actually named after a Riot 3D artist at the time named Maokai. During the beta phases, Master Yi actually had an ability called Vanish that allowed him to go invisible after going in a brush or using Alpha Strike. Now, before you say anything, it wasn't quite as bad as you think because during this stage, his Q was actually his ult, but it's still pretty terrifying to think about. Oddly enough, the teammate and champion that Melio has the highest win rate with is Singed. These were some of Miss Fortune's original concept arts, and let's just say it was a different game back then. Instead of a death realm, Mord's ultimate was almost more of a fight pit realm. They were testing a version that sucked everyone into the death realm to fight. The Sinful Succulence Morgana skin actually has some backstory to it. Apparently, while she was baking cookies, Morgana thought back to when Kayle stole her baking competition trophy from her the prior year, and then she started to rage. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The Fury was only released in July, and there's already someone named Wu Fury who has 640,000 mastery points. When Nami is recalling with her River Spirit Nami skin, she actually sings a portion of her login screen music too. Also, random side note, why does Nami look so freaking ripped? I feel like she just needs the Giga Chad face, and oh, there you go. Nasus using his ult on the Lunar Guardian skin is a reference to Dragon Ball. Nautilus was actually released with the intention of being a jungler, and it wasn't until season 4 that people started picking him as a support. Yo, only a small percentage of you watching are subs, so please consider hitting that sub button, helping me hit 200k subs. Thanks guys. Nico's favorite food is cheese bread. With Nidalee's recent lore updates, Nidalee is no longer technically just a cougar. She's instead a Paka, a species of cougar in the Runeterra world. And Pakitas, I have no idea if I'm saying that right, are kittens. Only 0.2% of players technically one-trick Nila. So there's kind of a disgusting combo you can do with Nocturne and Orianna, where if you have Orianna put her ball on you, you can then ult, and then she can ult right after you land, guaranteeing that Ori's ult hits. Kind of busted. Nunu's mother was actually the one singing the Path of the Hearthhome and Ornn's champion teaser.
Ornn! My mom used to sing your song as the ashes died in the fire.
Did you know that Olaf's Broloff skin has a Teemo on his shirt and is also wearing Sivir jeans? Did you know that Orianna actually has 2 different dance animations? One when the ball is attached to her and another when it's detached. According to the lore, Ornn likes to eat spicy cherries. One of the original concept pitches for Pantheon's redesign was to have multiple spears or arms coming out of them. When you use the Lollipoppy skin and dance with her, she'll actually make the terrifying face she had on the old Lollipoppy skin splash art. The name of Pyke's creature that pops up during his recall is nicknamed Nensi. Kiana was originally going to be able to wield fire as an element, but then they realized that Summoner's Rift has almost no fire. During playtesting, Quinn had a passive where Valor would fly down and suppress anyone who brought her below 30% health. This was also a global ability, so it would also go after someone like Karthus on the other side of the map. During development, Rakan was simply a pink Samson white Thresh, and his wings consisted of, I kid you not, a giant version of Braum's mustache. A pink Braum's mustache to be specific. Rammus, out of all the champions, has the highest win rate now at 53.4%. Rek'Sai's design was heavily inspired by the cancelled champion Omen, who was a demon and Voidborn-like creature. You can even see a skeleton of Omen in the background of Jurassic Kog'Maw's splash art. Rel and Talia were originally going to have a specific interaction in the game, but the two champions almost never ran into each other during the gameplay, so they ended up just scrapping it. Renata's quote,
"It's 1 health potion. What could it cost? 10,000 gold?"
is a reference to the Arrested development series.
I mean, it's 1 banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
I know like 1% of you are probably going to get this one, but the spikes on the back of Renekton's Renektoy skin are actually light brights. Rengar was one of the champions that was so poorly scripted that Riot themselves struggled to actually find solutions to some of the glitches. Kind of explains a lot.
Most Rengar bugs that I look into nowadays, I like spend hours on them and I don't find solutions. They're like really, really hard to fix at this point. It has to do with how poorly Rengar is scripted. Rengar is like scripted in just a really unsustainable way.
It's fairly well known that the world's 2012 Riven skin is one of the rarest skins in the game, as it was only obtainable at gaming conventions and events way back in the day. However, 2 times since then, Riot has accidentally released the skin back into the shop. Now, they did actually go back and remove most of the bot skins, but it's still pretty crazy considering how rare it is. I mean, look how much people can sell them for these days. Rumble has the biggest win rate difference out of every champion when it comes to which side he's playing on. When using the Ryze SKTT1 skin, you can see an image of broccoli on the screen during his recall, and a reference to a fan back then that said Faker's hair looks like broccoli. Also, Faker's response to that was saying he would eat a head of broccoli if SKT won the Season 5 Worlds, and they did, so he did that right after their victory. Did you know that during the animation on Samir's W, she won't just swing her sword around to block abilities, but instead she'll actually shoot the abilities straight out of the air to block it. Not only that, but depending on how fast the attacks are coming at her, she'll also speed up her counterattacks. This is honestly way cooler than I initially thought. Sejuani was picked the most out of any champion in the Season 13 Pro Play, being picked 2,750 times. She also ended with a 49% win rate though. Crescente was a close second. Senna originally actually had dual pistols like Lucian instead of one big gun. And she also had a passive where she got infinitely stacking % max health damage, which made it a lot easier to slap thick champions, but also made it a lot more difficult to kill people. However, this was kind of intentional since she was a support after all. Seraphine was inspired by Chinese culture, specifically Chinese Americans. The man and woman in Set's splash art are actually his lieutenants. Riot was once testing a rework of Shaco that would give him a Spectre ultimate from Dota 2, which in case you don't know basically creates clones for all the enemies. But for Shaco, it wasn't just a teleport. The way it worked was Shaco would disappear, turn into missiles, and then reappear as clones on the enemy champions. However, one thing they forgot to consider was what would happen if those missiles were to get interrupted.
In one playtest, Shaco cast his ultimate, which caused him to disappear, and then he shot missiles at everybody, but he was standing right next to a Yasuo, and the Yasuo windwalled his ultimate, destroying all the missiles. The thing is that ultimate was not scripted to bring Shaco back unless he swapped with a clone, which he couldn't do because all the missiles were destroyed. And so it actually straight up, no joke, deleted him from the game. Shaco just cast R, Yasuo windwalled it, and Shaco was gone. The best part of it is when it happened and everybody realized what had happened, the design pit stood up and gave the Yasuo player a standing ovation.
Did you know that Shen was a lot bigger in some of his original artworks? Shyvana's dragon for her dark flame skin was inspired by Red Eye's black dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! Also, in case you haven't seen it yet, this is the concept art for a rework that's currently being worked on. Sinch has a quote where he says,
"Shaken, not stirred,"
which is a reference to James Bond. There's a Scion main and streamer named The Boss who is notorious for being a high elo player who dies a lot. In this last year alone, he got banned by Riot 6 times. And in some of those games, he even won. In the old lore, Sivir was actually sentenced to just 90 days in jail after being arrested for drunk driving. Skarner is still the least popular champion in the entire game. He's also the front runner for champions who've gone the longest without a skin, currently sitting at over 1100 days. I mean, it kind of makes sense as they're planning a rework soon, but still, it's pretty rough for the Scorpion. Some of Smolder's sound effects were sampled from 2 different dogs. One was Riot King Cobra's dog Hagen, who helped with the effects for Smolder's W sneeze and emotes, and the other was Simba, another family dog. Here's a clip of Simba recording, and here's a clip of what it sounded like in game. In the lore, Jhin sees Sona as an art rival, and Lux and Ezreal are also big fans of her performances. In the old lore, Soraka was deceived by Warwick, and Warwick also tried to rip her heart out. Not emotionally, but physically. I don't know what's worse though. Swain's ability Nevermore is a reference to a narrative poem, The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, and it was actually supposed to be called Nevermore. But back then it was changed as a joke, and then they just decided to keep it in. The mark on Silas's arm is actually a brand that mage seekers burnt into the skins of mages. And the pulsing that you can see on his arm is actually intended to be magic pulsing through his veins because it's constantly draining his natural magic. In other words, I guess you're not scaling after all. Whenever you throw red buff on an enemy champion as Syndra, it actually applies a debuff to them. A similar thing happens with the blue buff too, where Syndra will be refunded 10 mana and get a 1-second cooldown reduction, but I've also mentioned that one before. Tahm Kench has a small chance to spit up a heart of gold during his joke animation, which was an old discontinued item. Talia's favorite color is indigo, and her favorite time of the day is dawn. Yes, I know, it's super random. Talon shares the same voice actor with the Azir, Travis Willingham. Tark's old ultimate, as in pre-reworked Tark, was called Radiance, which he slammed a hammer into the ground and it dealt damage to enemies nearby. However, what a lot of people don't know is that he even had a different ult before that, still called Radiance, but instead it was basically an infinite heal. It was so overpowered that they had to almost instantly change it. At the start of last year, it was discovered that the previous system players had to pay 640,950 blue essence to unlock all the champions, and now you only need to pay 517,444 blue essence, specifically 123,506 less blue essence. But if Teemo were to cost 500 blue essence, then the difference would be exactly 123,456 blue essence. I can't believe this person figured that out. Deep Terror Thresh typically pulls out a treasure chest during his recall animation, but he also has a chance of pulling out a tire instead and also getting really disappointed when it happens. Also, it's one of the skins that was considered to be pay to win because the start of his animation kinda looks like a wind up to his hook. Tristana is tied with Malphite and Seraphine for the lowest average rank for main champions at Silver 3. These days, Trundle is picked way more in the top lane than he is in the jungle, and he even has a higher win rate there as well. Tryndamere's fighting scene in the cinematic was probably metaphorical, and mostly just him fighting against death. That is until Ashe came in. It was a sick cinematic though. During High Noon Jin's recall, you can see a bounty poster on his desk of Twisted Fate for $7 million. Twitch's medieval skin was actually planned by 2 players, Graze and Grayer Wolfwood, to celebrate both of them being the first 2 people to hit 350 friend referrals. And this was of course way back in the day when League had a refer a friend system. These days, I don't think you're gonna get to make a skin just for referring a friend. Until the Ink Shadow skins were released, Udyr was the only champion not to have chromas for any of his skins, most likely because it's so difficult to do with all of his stances. Also, Udyr wins the most when he has an Ekko mid on his team. Pre-rework Urgot's dance was based off of Kirby's Victory Dance. I forgot how ugly that guy looked. Varus is actually around 4,296 years old. It's oddly specific. Vayne is technically a serial killer. According to her lore, she hunts and kills monsters, shapeshifters, and more just to satisfy her bloodlust. Did you know that Vygar's cage used to actually deal 1 true damage to every unit inside the cage? And it was even capable of killing them, assuming they were literally 1 HP. Vel'Koz is worth 3,141 blue essence in the store as a reference to Pi since he loves geometry. The shadow pose of Vex's laugh animation is a reference to the SpongeBob meme. Did you know that Vi was originally the younger sister of Jinx instead of the older sister? Additionally, because Vi was younger and Jinx was older, Jinx was also going to be the only one who knew her and Vi were sisters since Vi was so small. And later on, once they were older, it was also the reason that Jinx caused so much chaos because she wanted Vi to show up and chase her around.
It was intended from day one that Jinx was Vi's sister. We just, kept it from people.
During Viego's launch, Viego had a bug where he would just permanently turn into Rammus.
You'd be like powerballing on Rammus and you turn back into yourself and you just be stuck forever as a Rammus powerball that can attack people from 200 range.
Victor was really close to having a D&D skin where he was the dungeon master and his staff would have a 20-sided die at the end of it. Vladimir's biography was actually written by a player from the EU server named Blood Magics. Sounds about right. As a reward for winning Riot's Polycount Creative Contest in 2017. Volibear's theme song was sung by Einar Selvik, who was a Norwegian musician and the same person who also composed the music for the TV show Vikings. Warwick is one of the few champions balanced around silver, since that's where he gets the most play. Did you know that the original plan for Wukong's clone was for it to actually be able to move, somewhat similar to Nico or LeBlanc or even Shaco? Xayah had the most wins out of any champion during pro play this last season at 1,395, and she also ended with a 55% win rate. On the Japanese server, Xerath has an exclusive voice line that references JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If you zoom in on the original Secret Agent Xin Zhao's splash art and look at his sunglasses, you can actually see a reflection of Secret Agent Misfortune in her old splash art. When arenas first came out, Yasuo had a glitch where if he bought Rage Blade and then some kind of crit augment, they would repeatedly stack through each other, allowing him to crit ridiculous amounts. Even Riot August got to experience this in-game.
Wait.
What? In Yone's normal joke animation, he kills a fish and cuts it in half. But in his Dawnbringer Yone skin, he does the opposite and brings the fish back to life. In other words, swap back and forth between the two skins for infinite food glitch. As a side note, Yone is actually kind of tall. He is 190.5 centimeters or 6 foot 3 inches. Did you know that every time a new champion is released, Yorick has its own week, basically Yorick Week, where rioters are dedicated to fixing champions that bug out when Yorick ults them? I honestly had no idea that Yorick's ult was that much of an issue.
How do I make it so when my new champion gets Yorick ulted, the game doesn't crash?
Did you know that Yumi's You and Me spell was originally tested with Xayah and Rakan, where if one of them died, their spirit would attach to the other and you'd be allowed to keep playing? The recall animation for the SKT Zac skin was thought up by Blank himself, and here's a side-by-side. Did you know that Zed is intentionally kept weak?
It is intentional. Zed must be kept weak because he is the most frustrating champion in League of Legends. And so for all of eternity, Zed will probably be slightly weaker than he should be.
In the lore, Zeri's mom designed her gun to run purely off of Zeri's electricity, so it doesn't have any triggers or magazines. Ziggs, along with Nautilus, was actually going to be a completely different champion called Ivan the Mad Bomber. This isn't really a fact, but it's probably one of the leaguiest of Legends moments ever for Zillion players. Zoe was really close to having a similar passive to Corki's package, where instead of a package, she would bring a giant water balloon into the fight and it would be able to flood a huge section of the jungle. And if they were in it, it would potentially put multiple enemies to sleep as well. There used to be a hidden passive where Zyra gained +1 movement speed whenever a Maokai was on the team with her. Ironically, in the lore, she also looks down on Maokai. Alright, that's finally it. Don't forget to sub and make sure to go check out all my other useless info videos, including 5 other videos exactly like this one. This is technically part 6. Anyways, thanks for watching and I will see you next time. A giant shout out to my incredible patrons and supporters. We had Gooseman, Set, Ryan, and Hagel, and a huge shout out to my tier 3 patrons, Stefan and Wolf. Seriously, thank you guys so much. All right, see you next time. Bye.